This show is sponsored by Realtor Cynthia Bear, Putting Down Roots. Visit your in-town real estate specialist in Atlanta at cynthiabaer.com.
You are now tuned in to the Good Gracious Show. Welcome.
Howdy, Good Gracious family. It is Sunday, June 23rd. This is episode 133 of the Good Gracious Show. It's been a minute. Took a break. I admit it. I got lazy. I said it's summertime. I'm going to take some time off. And my family life in chaos. My son graduating high school at Grady. Just kind of moved all the pieces around a little bit. So we got to, we all have to take that time sometimes and just appreciate what's going on. And but now I'm back, and I'm trying to spread the good news. There's some wonderful folks here on this podcast that I know you will enjoy.
I am Tim Kohler. I also go by Tim Kohler Tyndale, as that is my name on my driver's license. And I am a songwriter and musician from Marietta, Georgia.
Well, there you go. And how long have you been a songwriter, do you think?
I have been writing songs probably since about 14. So I guess that would make
a long time.
About 21 years. And I mean, it started with just poems that were set to music that was just contained in my brain before I had access to things that make musical sounds. And then it really took off after I got musical instruments, and it really took off.
What did you start playing?
Well, I started on drums. No. Technically, I started on trumpet.
Because at school you had to play an instrument.
The band teacher came in when I was in 7th grade, and so I grew up in this real small town, and you could choose from 6 instruments, and it was clarinet and trumpet and saxophone and drums. It might have been even 4 or 5. And I said, "Oh, I want to play that snare drum. That looks really fun." And they said, we had 8 people sign up for that one already. You have to pick something else. And I said, okay, well, so Billy Joel was on the cover of 52nd Street holding a trumpet. So I thought, okay, well, I'll do that, and I'll do that. And I was very, very bad at the trumpet. Yeah. And that lasted about a year. And when I moved, I was able to move into the percussion section of the middle school band, and kind of demanded very annoyingly that I needed a drum set, or else my musical development would be stunted. And then, in the most ironic way possible, got the drum set for my for Christmas, and then after about 6 months realized that I cannot write a song on a drum set.
Yeah, it's the rare individual, I think. You don't find a whole lot of Phil Collins. He seems to do okay, right?
Yeah, but that was Kinsman. That was because Peter Gabriel left.
So you think that's the only reason Phil Collins came?
I guess we'll never know. Yeah. But I was more thinking along the lines of Dave Grohl. Yeah. Because I saw Dave Grohl play drums in Nirvana, but then I also saw him as the lead singer of the Foo Fighters, and he was talking about writing songs, and I thought, well, if he can do that, certainly I could. But then I ran into a secondary problem, which was that, I knew a bunch of people who played the drums, and I didn't know anybody who played the guitar. So I thought, okay, with this grocery bagging money that I got at 15, I saved up for a guitar that I still have to this day, and it's still my primary guitar. And I taught myself a lot of guitar over the course of 20 years. I would say that I've gotten pretty good. But what really did it is when the piano showed up, which was my grandmother's piano. And, it was a different time. People had pianos in their homes, I think, as more of a just that's tradition.
Yeah, you have tradition. That's your culture.
Right, that was your culture. I guess just in case everybody wanted to sing along, they could gather around. But she never played it. So every time we'd go up every time we'd visit their home outside of DC, I'd say, God, I just really love this piano. And, ask and ye shall receive. And from then it was just on. I was enamored with the idea of creating a piece of music out of thin air. I was much less interested in becoming good at any of those things. Like, my only motivation for becoming good at any of those instruments was when I would meet somebody who was really good. I played music with this guy Charlie Mills, who plays in Pony League, and when I saw him play guitar, I said, "Oh, I gotta step it up." But that was my.
How long did that last, though? Really, I mean, was that just like a little burst where you go, "Okay, man, I'm really gonna double down, and I'm gonna," or did you find it was enough of an engine to get you going?
Well, it was more motivation for me. I wanted to be a better singer, because somewhere along the line, a couple years in, my bandmates would be like, "Hey, your songs are good, but we really think maybe we ought to get a singer," because I wasn't cutting it. And when you're a teenager,
that's tough love. You need that.
You're yeah. When you're a teenager, it's like, oh, well, what are you talking about? Like, I'm I'm speaking from my soul. And then, I'd listen back to the demos that I would make, and I would be like, oh, I guess maybe they've got a point. Somebody said somewhere along the line, they said, your songs are really, it was, maybe around like 17 or 18 now. And the songs were starting to get pretty good. And they said, oh, you're just not going to be, your songs are really good, Tim. You're just not going to be like a front man. You're just not that kind of material. And man, I took that and like kept it in here like for so long and have tried so hard. And now I teach, vocal lessons, So it's a matter of, it's kind of this, never give up principle, also coupled with just sort of like, well, I'll show them, right. Chip on my shoulder kind of thing. But it always comes back to the songwriting process. I'm always like fascinated with how can I create something out of thin air that's different than this other thing that I created before. And it's always, I always want it to be different than the thing before, and I always want it to try to be a little bit, if I have some long songs, and if I finished a song that was, 10 or 11 minutes long, then I'll go back and I'll say, okay, now I'm gonna try to do one that's like under 4, And recently I finished a couple that are under 3, and I'm like, whoa, I surprised myself.
Do you think are you finding the power of the edit or of simplifying things, or do you feel like maybe you were just stretching too far for some of your songs and that you felt like you had to tell a broader story? You know what I mean?
Well, for some of them, I wanted to do that. I wanted to do something very, very long. I wanted to do that. And that comes from this kind of desire within me to make people want to pay attention. Because life isn't a 3-minute pop song. I mean, when you really get right down to it. I mean, and what I try to do is with any of my songs, no matter what it is, I'm trying to take a Polaroid, right, of a moment in time that is either you're remembering or it's unfolding in front of you before your eyes. And some of those moments can't be summed up in your basic format. And then sometimes I will set out to do, okay, well, this one I got to keep under 4.5 minutes, just as almost like an exercise. Yeah. But it's a matter of like, what do I want to say? It always comes back to that. What picture am I trying to paint? What am I trying to say? What and how can I say it? And that I always find that much more of like an interesting, fascinating process than sitting there practicing scales and like memorizing chords.
So for you, songwriting drives why you play to a large degree.
100%.
Yeah. Is that a bit of a demon, though, to have that little creative drive in you that says, I have to get out a song, so now I have to, it's propelling your art, right?
Well, it used to be a burden. I mean, it really used to be. I used to be much more of a, I would say, lazier person than I am today, and I had other things on my mind, pretty much all through my 20s, and so it was, for a while, it was just like kind of about the path of least resistance, and I got okay, well, I gotta get this out, and I know I was able to know enough chords and know enough about what was going on in order to convey the idea that I wanted to convey. And now it's more like, I'll give you an example. I was just tracking a vocal to something that is, I'm 99% sure this is going to be my next single, and it's this vocal line. It's like literally it's not the climax of the song, it's the verse of the song, and it starts out in the top of my chest voice, very, very, very difficult. And I think maybe even 4 or 5 years ago, let's rewrite this melody so that I don't have to
work so hard,
kill myself to do it. Whereas, when I'm tracking this vocal, my friend who is the engineer, he was saying, well, let's run it again, because your voice is just starting to get good now. Your voice is your voice is just warming up, and I'm cracking and choking, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, what is he talking about? But now I kind of welcome the opportunity to push myself, because life is really all about, no matter whether if you're in academia or if you're in art or music, it's all about, you're facing something that's really hard, and you have to do something that's really hard. And you chip away at it, and you do it, and you do it, and you keep chipping, and you keep doing until it's not so hard anymore. And then you move on to the next thing that's harder than what that was before. And that's really how you get good at anything. That's whether it's writing a song or playing an instrument or making a film or taking an exam or having a conversation with somebody. I mean, that's the more that you do something that's hard, it's not going to be as hard and daunting anymore. And I don't mean to get all sort of like philosophical here, but but that is what I mean, that is what I tell my students, and that is what I tell the people around me. I'm constantly driven to being better than I was yesterday.
I think that's admirable, and that everybody should be doing that, right? I mean, you should be a better parent every day. You should be a better human every day.
Well, I don't like to tell people should anything, but for me, I'm a little bit more of a content person when I can kind of look back at the end of my day and say, I'm glad, I'm proud of my actions today.
Yeah. And
it's not always perfect. It's not always perfect. It's like there's no perfect performance.
Right. It's something that you reach for. You're always reaching for that, right?
You've got to.
Yeah.
You've got to. And I've come close with some performances, and I've come close with some days. But I've also, every day is basically for me like, all right, I'm trying to be a little bit better.
Well, and that's like I said, I think that's admirable. I'm curious. You said that you didn't feel your singing voice was where you felt it should be. How did you get so that you're either comfortable with it, or how did you improve it? Did you take lessons, or did you try to emulate different singers, or what?
Well, I started singing all the time. I sang in the shower. I sang in the backseat of the car when I got my driver's license. I sang in the car by myself. I would sing along to anything, and I would pay attention to the singers that I really liked. And yeah, there was a little bit of emulation going on. But when you're younger, there is a tendency to go, oh, I really like that sound, so I'm going to make this sound and use that kind of in my art. You know, the first, it was like the first 3 bands that I was in, like you could point to like, oh, well, he really likes the Smashing Pumpkins. And then the next band was like, oh, this guy's really into Radiohead. And then the next band was like, oh, these guys are really into the Mars Volta. And then after a certain point, if you just do that for a long time, then you kind of develop your own thing, because you take a little bit here, you take a little bit there. But I just did it.
Yeah.
And I did take some vocal lessons, because in my senior year of high school, I needed a class to round out my final semester, and I signed up for the musical. I thought, well, okay, well, it'll be fun to try out and everything. And I got a part, and I thought, oh, okay, all right. So I took maybe 2 or 3 vocal lessons. I mean, they were very, very helpful. They were very helpful, and there's very little from those lessons that I've forgotten. But I also grew up with my sister, who is one of the best singers that I've ever heard, still to this day. And she recently started taking lessons again. That she doesn't, I mean, she likes to sing pop music, but she's also, I mean, she in high school and college, she sung those arias that are in like French and German and Italian, and the things where you hear it and it's like, wow, like the human voice is so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it helped. There was a little bit of a not competition, but there was also a little bit of I paid attention a lot. At least when she and I were under the same roof.
Yeah. Well, that gives you a good model. I mean, it gives you something to shoot for a little bit, or to say, okay, I don't have that power maybe, but maybe there's some lessons or I can pick up some bits and pieces, right?
Sure. It's the same reason that, when all throughout my 20s, I wanted all of my best friends to be songwriters. And really they aren't so much to this day. I mean, growing up and getting older, but some of my closest friends are still songwriters, because I always wanted to get better, and there's just something about that wow factor when I'm going to use Gus as an example, because you spoke with him before. Yeah. The wow factor of, I remember when he started writing his own stuff, and he was the drummer in a punk band for so long, and all of a sudden he starts writing this stuff on the piano, and I'm just like, whoa. And there's like a really nice, warm, fuzzy feeling you get when one of your friends writes a really great song. And you're just like, wow, that's great. It's inspiring. And you go home and you go, okay, now I got to push myself a little bit to be a little bit better. And I've known tons of people like that. Yeah. And I think that there's a real, I mean, that's why communities are made. Ultimately, that's why you have things called like the quote unquote scene. Yeah. There was a great scene for a long time. I don't know if maybe it's still there and I don't know about it because I'm old and I moved up to the suburbs with my slippers and
the white picket fence and the
white picket apartment. Yeah. For now, but but it was everybody was. It was very encouraging, and all of the bands that were a part of that scene, Pony League grew out of something called Cute Boots, and Cute Boots grew out of something called the North Trolls, who were like, I guess, power punk pop is really the best term that I could put for them. They were maybe the best band for a while. And then other bands that are still going, like Small Reactions. Hello Ocho was a band that I spent some time in. They're no longer around, but everyone's doing stuff. And, you know, everyone's real encouraging of one another. At the 529 or the Earl, no matter what. I mean, no matter if, you know, 10 people stumbled in off the street looking for something to do or not, you would always find, you know, members of other bands in that community in the audience of that. That was probably the number one. When I would look out into the audience of shows I was playing in with bands, I mean, if there were 30 people there, I guarantee you 24 of them were in local bands,
yeah,
and then the other 6 were all there dating.
Yeah,
the bands are. But that kind of community. I mean, it's not that much different than when you hear about, you know, Bob Dylan hanging out with the Beatles in the '60s, or you know, John Lennon being good friends with Brian Jones, or you know, I mean, it's not really that much different. It's just that. Now there are more human beings on Earth, and we have this thing called the internet, and now the market is really. Atlanta's very, 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 very saturated with bands, and I would say that extends all the way up into the Marietta. It's like L.A. It extends all the way up into the Marietta area, and, you know, Woodstock and Norcross and all that. Like, there's just everybody's trying to do it.
Yeah, and that's. I think that's always been the case, though. I just feel like maybe the internet has just exposed everybody to the fact that that's what's going on. You know, before you never knew. If you lived in East Atlanta, you didn't really know what was going on in Woodstock or in Duluth or whatever. But now, because there's this weird spidery thing on your telephone or whatever that you can just look and you go, oh, yeah, there's a whole lot of activity going on.
Well, you know, and a place like Mad Life Stage and Studios, for example, a place like that, it almost like couldn't exist here.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to Mad Life?
I've been outside it. I've not been inside.
Been outside it?
Yes.
You drinking on a patio somewhere?
I'm just walking around. I said, look at this.
Well, downtown Woodstock's great, by the way. I mean,
I'm shocked. I'm shocked by it. Yes.
It's pretty
impressive for what's out there.
Yeah, I thought there'd be lots of like tumbleweeds and just kind of like people looking at me menacingly from some sort of truck.
Right.
But it's like Marietta Square. It's great. I have a student, and she's like, yeah, I go busk out in Woodstock, downtown Woodstock, and I was like, guys, did you know there's a Taqueria del Sol of like Woodstock? Like, this is, I come back to Atlanta, I'm like, oh, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But a place like Mad Life, which like kind of solely not solely, but runs a lot of tribute bands and. You know, it's a lot like the 37 Main they have in Buford. They used to have one in Johns Creek, and I used to go see like Queen tribute bands and things like that. And it's almost like you can't have that here. You know, it's almost like Atlanta's like, it's like, where would you put it almost?
Yeah. It is amazing the ecosystem of music that exists. Do you feel like the South has been particularly good for you, whether that's developing your craft or just the environment that's created by whatever it is we call the South?
My time in the South. And it's fun. Listen, it's funny you should say the South, because I wasn't born here. I don't mean to adopt a tone like I'm not responsible for this. Yeah. But like I said, I was you know, I grew up in a small town on the border of New Hampshire, about an hour and 10 minutes north of Boston. And I mean, I can only imagine what my songs would be like if I had stayed in that part of the country. I mean, first of all, I definitely would have found my way to Boston at some point. I'm a city. I love the city regardless of whether I
can stay right in it or not.
Yeah, I mean, with where I am at in my life at this very moment, having gotten married last year, finishing college, looking forward to the future of my career, turning 35, in February. Marietta is where I need to be, like 100%, and I am so happy that I'm there. Chemicals don't make a true reaction, and I can't do this on my own, and I can't do this on my own. Don't be shy. Till later. I was lying face up in the grass and held that moment for 1,000 days. Life was filled with moments just like that, some kind of magic I could recreate. Now I've run out of ways I can't escape, and that's okay, I think, and now nothing seems familiar but the sound, astonishing and brilliant, I have found a way in from the cold, but you're not sold. You think you have all the answers, but you don't. You think you have all the answers, but you don't. That's right. So I won't take my chances. I don't know how, but we'll get it all figured out.
name is Amber A. Harris, and I am a teacher, a learner, a philanthropist, a producer, a director, a singer, an actress, a Jane of all trades, master of none.
Well, I can identify.
Being a jack of all trades, correct?
Well, I'm definitely the master of none when it comes to comes to true talent there. So, but what's your, if you had to pick, and granted you don't always want to. I know in the creative, it's hard because you've got these things that pull on you. But
Something
if there,
different every day.
well, let's just say that. What was your first love, maybe?
My first love was music.
And you said, I am going to be.
I wanted to be a singer, and then I grew up and realized that was very hard because you would have to live a totally different lifestyle if you wake up and sing every day. And so I was like, so no, let me go and be a part of the theater where I can act and sing, and I don't have to just totally sing all the time. So, yeah, music is my first love, not being a singer, but music, period. And I'm eclectic. I like all types of music. So I would say music is certainly my first love.
Yeah. So how did you burrow your way into the theater then?
It started in church. I grew up in church. And at the end of Vacation Bible School each summer, we would have a culminating performance. And I would always play this character called Brother Yumi. And I went to a performing arts high school, North Atlanta Performing Arts, and that it was always in me, an only child, so I had to entertain myself. So it just kind of came natural. But I heard about an audition happening over the radio, and I asked my mom, I was like, can you take me to this audition? It was a show called Oops, Here It Is, God is Trying to Tell You Something. It was done at the Alliance Theater. And I was 16. That was my first professional gig at 16. And so it went from there. I went to school
once
for
you get that
theater,
taste,
and,
that's hard.
I went to college for theater. Then I went to get my master's of fine arts in acting. Then moved to New York and LA. And so, yeah.
And so then you're just in. And that's in my family. I've got some thespians in there too, and it's an addiction. It's an illness.
Yeah.
I mean, because once you get that bright lights, and and I think the challenge too is if your first big experience is on the Alliance, you know what? That's where you're going to start, girl. Come on. you couldn't do like a little local thing.
Yeah, I did it at the church for years.
I know. But that's the thing is that once you've had that taste of that big, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
That professional feel, that light, you got backstage.
That audience.
Oh, yeah, and the glorious space.
I love you, So,
constantly looking for that I love you, aren't you?
Yeah. I've given it up, though. I've retired.
Yeah.
And so I'm just in and out every now and then.
Yeah.
As I mentioned to you, possibly preparing to play Rosetta Tharpe with, I won't call the theater, but June of 2020. So excited for that.
So if you're just kind of dabbling in and out, how did that come about? Did you know somebody? Because, I mean, so much of theater can be family, right?
Yes. What happened is I sat in on a show that some of my good friends wrote. And while sitting in, I made the connections with the artistic director at the theater, the general manager. And so it just kind of became, hey, we're doing this show. You want to come and audition? And then luckily I have a few connects with people at the Alliance who cast for this particular theater. And so sometimes you get calls directly from the casting director, Right. So it's not about who you know, but who knows you. And who knows you will call you because they know your work ethic.
Right.
They know what you're going to bring. And so I learned a long time ago, it's not about who you know, because I know all kind of people.
Right.
But they aren't helping me get work.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's who knows you.
Yeah. If you want a job at, Target, hey, you might have the perfect filling right now.
Exactly.
But, moving you down the road or to the next level, that's the challenge.
Right.
And that is, I think, it's probably the lesson they should be teaching us in school from the beginning.
Right.
Is that because, especially in the creative industries, almost anybody you talk to, they can tell you a story of kismet, of just happenstance, of because you knew somebody who knew somebody.
Absolutely.
And I find that it is that way, and it's mainly because of you're successful by how, like you said, how you prepare, how you
deliver,
yeah. But also how you treat people.
Absolutely.
Right? Because we all know tremendous artists out there
who are not working,
who nobody wants to be around either.
Yeah.
And
because you don't know how to establish great working relationships,
Yeah.
and people have an issue with hierarchy. And that's what I've learned in this business. Now being on the other side as a producer and filmmaker and writer, you got a brown nose,
Yeah.
And as much as you don't want to, you got to go get those cups of coffee, and
It's a little bit of paying your dues.
It
but,
is.
But at the same time, like you said, though, even if it's just in that very elementary kind of position,
right.
People say, well, they couldn't even do that right.
Exactly.
So,
and I always, when I talk to young people and I talk about how your success can happen, I go back to Lena Waithe, who's doing wonderful things right now. She's the first black female to win an Emmy for a comedy, which was Master of None on Netflix. And now she's doing all kind of wonderful shows all across the globe. But originally, she was a PA on the set with Ava DuVernay, and when she was nominated and then won the Emmy, Ava posted a photo of Lena being in the back of a Uber, the Lyft, with like a tub of coffee, and she's like, "Remember when you used to go and get our coffee, and look at you now?" So it's so groundbreaking, and I always use her, Lena Waithe, as a great example of not giving up and just continuing to go for what you know, what you love, and that passion that you have, and it'll pay off eventually.
You just got to hope. You got to have faith, and if you're a good person, you treat people right, it'll come together.
Absolutely.
So, that's fascinating. So, what are you working on right now then? So when you decided you'd move from theater to another creative element, what took you in that direction?
Being able to employ people, being able to provide jobs for a plethora of my friends who I know are capable of doing the work, but they haven't had an opportunity, who people don't know their name or they don't know their face. And also to tell the narrative from our point of view, so many times we get the white male trying to tell a black story, and I don't think you can tell that if you haven't been black, Right. It's like I probably can't tell, a white story because I've never been white. And so for me, when I was offered a scholarship to go back and get my Master's of Fine Arts in Filmmaking, I said to myself, I'd already been dibbling and dabbling in that field, but just with music videos. I said, now is the opportunity for me to get behind the camera and tell our stories. And I said, because I am an actress, I can write myself and my own stuff and put myself in front of the camera.
There you go.
It's kind of like
it's the Spike Lee theory, right?
Absolutely. Very Spike Lena. I'll take that. Yes, I'll be Spike Lena. Yeah, for sure.
So what has that done? So you've created a production company?
Yes, I have a small production company called Just an Inch Entertainment. We've produced 4 shorts. The last one, which had its premiere, I guess, its world premiere at Universal Studios in Los Angeles, which was really cool. It dealt with mental health in the black family, something that's very prevalent in our culture that we don't talk about. Being in the South, you come from, just pray it away or, sweep it under the rug. What goes on in this house stays in this house. And I feel if people have the appropriate medical attention, they can certainly live whole lives. But when you don't do anything about it, and it continuously gets worse over the years, like you're only doing a disservice to that person. And so I feel like it needs to be put in our faces. We need to talk about it, and we need to constantly talk about mental health, period.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's really... it's something that we sweep under the rug, and it doesn't need to be.
Well, and we're all just one step away, depending on the circumstances.
It's a thin line between love and hate and insanity, right? For sure.
So what was the name of that piece that you did on mental
Never
health?
Alone. That was the one that dealt with mental health in the black family, and because I said that's something we don't talk about often. And it was really the man being the hero and doing everything he needed to do to make sure his wife didn't totally go off the deep end and to get her the help that she needed. You have to see the film to see how it all unfolds. But
How can is there a way that people can access
well,
it?
right now I'm working on having a new edit of it and looking to have a premiere in September because that's Mental Health Month. So
Nice.
I'm looking to do that in September.
Well, terrific. Well, keep me posted because
For
I
sure.
might have a couple of venues that could
Sure, screen it.
Yeah, get it
sure,
out there.
Sure, for sure.
All right. So we got the production company and you got the theater bouncing around.
Yeah.
So what's next?
So next, I am doing a project with the Auburn Avenue Library, and it's called The Intersection of Hip Hop and Social Justice, and it's kind of centered around Nipsey Hussle's life. And the Nipsey Hussles in our neighborhood, in our communities, that we need to embrace and highlight.
Well, let's talk about who Nipsey Hussle. Right, give kind of a background.
So Nipsey Hussle, the marathon continues. Rest in peace. Was a very prolific lyricist. Ermias Asegdom is his birth name. Father's first generation African, came from Africa to California, and his mom is originally from California. They met, and Nipsey is the baby of two that his mom and father had. Well, two boys rather, and he started off in the gangs and realized that what he was doing in the community was not helping his community. So I think he did a bid, and for those who don't know what a bid is, go to jail. I think he did a bid like for 90 days, came back and changed his entire outlook, and also a trip to Africa changed his outlook on community and philanthropy and gentrification. And so his thing was gentrify your own hoods. Like, go in, buy up the block, put your mom and pop grocery stores, restaurants here. And so he created a store called the Marathon Store, and they sell all types of Crenshaw, which is Slauson and Crenshaw is where he's from, and that's where the store sits, on that corner in California. He just wanted to put his block on blast, as you say, and he wanted people to know where he came from. He wanted to be able to start STEM programs, which he was working on. He wanted to be able to work with the LAPD to combat the gang violence, although he was not an active gang member. Once you're in, you can't get out.
He knows the world.
So, exactly. Yeah. So, to really go in and change the scope of the community, that's what he was doing. That's what he was leaning towards. And then ultimately, his life was taken senselessly March 31st of this year. And so it really rocked the hip-hop world. It really it rocked people because he was kind of like the new age Tupac. The only difference is Tupac died poor, and, his stock went up like crazy after he died, I think the store alone did like $10 million within the month that he passed away, to the point where they've had to shut it down because people are going crazy for the items, going crazy to have a feel, a touch, to see who was this young man that was really making a difference, and his life was just ripped from him, taken away from his children, his parents, his siblings. And so Auburn wanted to highlight him and the good works that he was doing in Los Angeles, and talk about the good works that the Killer Mikes of Atlanta are doing, the T.I.s, the 2 Chainz. I mean, we can go on and on, the Rashidas, the Candys, the Jermaine Dupri's. If we even go back further, Goody Mobs, and that's CeeLo and Big Gip and the crew, these are the people who put Atlanta on the map when it comes to music, hip-hop, and, when it comes to social justice, we have our John Lewises and our Andrew Youngs and our rest in peace Maynard Jacksons, who made sure that or did their best to kind of maintain equality amongst everybody, and we do know that there isn't really equality amongst everybody.
No, there's always challenges,
so,
right?
Yes, and we're it's a work in progress, and we're working at it, but slowly but surely, but it does take everybody coming together in a cohesive unit to understand that we have to work together if we're going to live together. We have to work together and work together in love, whether you like somebody or not is different.
That's right.
But you should love them regardless.
That's family.
Exactly.
Right?
And it's humanity.
Yeah.
We all come from one place,
We're all going to go back to the same place, most likely.
and 9 times out of 10, we are brothers and sisters. So, hey, let's love on each other, whether I like you or not. Like, sometimes I don't like my sister, but that doesn't mean I don't love her, And sometimes there are differences of opinions, and I may see it one way and you see it another, but we're going to agree to disagree, and you go your way, I'll go mine, and I'll see you when we get there, because we'll probably end up at the same place. You're just going to go a different path, Hopefully this is just, the beginning of moving forward with a movement here in Atlanta, to really highlight those people. And Nipsey Hussles can be men and women, highlight those men and women who are really doing their best to make a difference in the community, to be change agents, which I truly believe in being, and to give back, to give back, because I always think somebody did it for me, so who am I not to do it for someone else? That's paying it forward, but just, again, being human and humane, you want to see other people win, I'm not trying to let the door close behind me. I'm holding it open for somebody else to come through, know, so. But I'm really excited about being able to bring this to the community, being able to hear from the community, you know, what is it that you want to see or you want to do differently, because you have to be the change you want to see, and it starts with you seeing it before you see it. So if that means, having a vision board, or if that means sticky notes all through the house and on the mirror, you need to see it before you can physically see it. And that's just my motto.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Well, if people want to learn more about what you're doing, what you're up to, or how they can maybe get involved, maybe they're an investor, or maybe they're a writer, screenwriter. You never know. We all need investors, right?
Yes.
What's the best way for people to track you down and find you?
On all social media platforms. Unfortunately, they're kind of different. So Facebook and Twitter is Amber A. Harris, at Amber A. Harris. Instagram is Let Me Style You. Again, Let Me Style You, because I do that too. I've had a few editorials in New York, Time Out magazine in New York City. I've made the front cover for my styling. So, it's a little bit of everything over it on IG. But Let Me Style You is what I am there. LinkedIn, Amber A. Harris also.
All right.
Yeah. But thank you.
Thanks for coming in today.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it. Yeah, enjoyed it.
Well, I got to send a shout-out apology to Amber. I didn't get the podcast put together quite timely enough for her hip-hop and social justice speech downtown. But I know it was a great success, and hopefully we'll be hearing more about it. Either way, you should check into some of the things going on down there at the library, as well as look into Nipsey Hussle, if you don't know who he is. And there's some real positive things to be taken about the tragic shooting death of this this rising community activist and talent. So that's it for another episode of The Good Gracious Show. You can check us online. You can track us down on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter a little bit. But just trying to put some good vibes out there and make people realize that, the South is an amazingly talented place. So you need to get out. You need to go visit. You need to see artists. You need to support artists, whether they're musicians or actors or, just creators, people that are doing something that makes a better world for all of us. So that's my love for these people. That's what I do. I just try to promote, because I know we've got one of the best places to live in the world, and sometimes we just got to remind ourselves of that. So Anyway, that's it. And, go hug someone, be a good neighbor, and we'll talk to you next week.